Hello. Hello today. So glad you guys are here. It looks like a couple people are already here to hang out with me. Oh, this is a good one. This is a big one, you guys. Law of attraction. Getting myself settled here. Gotta get comfy. That's like the first step of anything, right? Yes. For those of you who attend, I think both of you have been to a live stream before. Is my video quality any better today? I'm just curious. Um, I may have figured out part of why the video quality is so choppy sometimes. I know my internet is not good, and that's part of it, but I think I had something going on my computer that was part of it too. So, yeah, let me know if that's any better. And I wanted to do this live stream, this Law of Attraction live stream, which I don't even think I've ever made a video on my channel about Law of Attraction specifically. I know I mention it all the time. But I really wanted to have this conversation. It was one of those ideas that downloaded in my mind, and before I even knew what was happening, my fingers are doing the thing where they're scheduling the live stream. And it's happening. Okay, easy peasy. It's on the calendar. All you got to do is show up. And so I've been cultivating through law of attraction, trusting the divine timing of things and the unfolding of things. And where I've never felt called or specifically passionate to make content around the law of attraction before, right now it feels like this conversation has something for me and probably every single other person who listens to it. So I'm pretty excited about that. Life is going very well at this point, thanks to law of attraction and my understanding of how it works and how my emotions work. My goal for this session is to take questions. So at any point, if you guys have questions or things that you would want to talk about, then let's drop those in the chat. But otherwise, I'm just going to share about my experience over these last 6 years of consciously participating with law of attraction. It's going on all the time, all around all of us. And it's one of those things like gravity that you really don't have to understand how it works for it to be working in your life. So this is my story of waking up to this knowledge and basically remembering this knowledge. I don't think it's my first lifetime using it, but that's a whole nother story for another day about reincarnation and all of that. But yeah, remembering this over these last 6 years, it has completely changed my course as far as how I approach life and how I interpret life. It's kind of the foundational basis of everything that I do. And like lately, I've been getting a lot of really awesome feedback about my astrology interpretations and people asking how long I've been studying astrology. And for that, it's only 18 months, but I feel like this basis of law of attraction that I have been building for 6 years now is a big piece, if not like even more dominant than my astrology knowledge, is how to look through this lens of being a deliberate creator in this time and space. So I was I was sitting this morning journaling and getting clear about, even my own relationship with law of attraction and kind of letting that guide what I might want to talk about with you guys today. And I just started writing down like all the concepts, like if you're going to really study law of attraction, and again, I don't know how clear that is, but like each of these is just a whole different piece to understand to like really consciously participate with it. And yet it's not that complicated. So I definitely want to approach this from like a beginner standpoint, and I want to communicate the true simplicity in participating with law of attraction and being a deliberate creator. It's not as complicated as, oh, it's going to take me years and years and years to figure out how to do this. It's so simple and it's totally within us. It's basically how we pay attention, what we choose to pay attention to. And in that, Abraham-Hicks teaches about our emotional guidance system and using our emotional guidance system to help us navigate moment by moment life. And what that looks like here's one example, a conversation that I was having with someone the other day, and very much a situation I've been in myself, is they were being around a certain person on a regular basis and not really by their own choice, more from a sense of feeling obligated to do that. And we're just really hitting this wall with, I feel like when I come back from spending time with this person, I have like an energetic hangover. I have to like spend time recovering after I hang out with them. I really wish I didn't have to hang out with them. And we don't, right? Like, this is the point of control. This is the point of our power. This is where we find our self-empowerment, is how we pay attention in the world, how we choose to participate in the world, the things we show up to, and the things we politely decline. Politely. I think politely. That really came out though. I like the ring of it. I don't think it's a real word though. But anywho, so it's like, I think the old tendency, live for the new. Yes, it's a full moon in Leo, but yes, full moon in Leo. And that went into my scheduling for this. So that like definitely played a part. Because like I said, law of attraction, I haven't really talked about it. And the Leo full moon is about stepping out in your creativity in a way. You see Stella back here? Yeah, in a way that's maybe new territory, and it feels a little risky. It feels like you're having to call on your courage, which is what Leo's really good at, is like mustering up their courage and following through on their passion. So thank you guys for hanging out with me while I do this. So Abraham-Hicks, she teaches about our emotional guidance system. And I feel like one of the precursors to being able to participate with law of attraction is being able to take responsibility for how we feel. So we can't use our emotional guidance system to navigate if we're blaming our emotions on someone else and we're asking them to be different so that we can feel better. It's more like, in the example I just shared, if this person doesn't make you feel good, if they feel like they're tearing down your energy where you have to go home and do repair work on your energy now, that's for you to decide. Do you want to go back? Do you want another dose of that, or are you good? Did you get the expansion that you needed that first time? And most of us, we go back again and again and again because we tell ourselves stories like we should. This is what I should do. This is what I have to do. They're my parents. I have to go over there. They're sick. I have to take care of them. They're old. I have to be there. I have to. That's my responsibility. That's my obligation. And then we're living up to things like that, and it doesn't feel good. And then our life is manifesting as a reflection of we don't feel good on a dominant, like normal basis. And so being a deliberate creator and using your emotional guidance system, taking responsibility for how you feel, means if your attention land on something that doesn't feel good, move your attention to something that does feel good. That's the deliberate part in being a deliberate creator, is deliberately choosing what you pay attention to. And I'm guessing if you guys are here, you understand a good big chunk of this, that that it's way more fun to pay attention to things that feel good than paying attention to things that feel bad. And sometimes paying attention to things that feel bad, or complaining or venting, or going the ninth round with your crazy neighbor or your brother-in-law that you can't stand, or like whatever it is, those things, they get momentum going, and they can be easy to just kind of get into that pattern of, this is how I think, this is what I say, this is what I'm paying attention to. And it can be really challenging when you recognize one of those pockets of, yeah, it doesn't feel good to pay attention to this. I need to switch subjects. That subject, you've already put attention into it. If it's showing up in your life, it's active in some amount. And at that point, that momentum, it'll draw you back again and again and again. And the art of being a deliberate creator is about practicing waking up inside a moment that doesn't feel good and choosing to refocus yourself. So, it's like today I'm going to say, I'm not going to talk about this thing. I'm not going to complain about my crazy brother-in-law anymore. And I'm going to put it out of my mind. And you make it a few hours, and then your friend calls and is like, hey, what's going on with your brother-in-law? And you launch into a whole thing about, just like it pulls you back in. So now you're in the middle of the story that you always tell, and you wake up and you're like, wait, no, this is the energy that doesn't feel good. And I want to feel good. So I need to get off this subject. And it's learning to say, you know what? I think, yep, that's enough on him. What do you got that's like funny? What's going on that's good? What happened that's good in your life today? Like, let's change the subject. I need to get off this. And to consciously, deliberately choose to not pay attention to things that don't feel good. And the subjects, it's easy to blame them because they just keep popping up. And that's the momentum side of it. That like once the momentum got going, because you spent so much time thinking about it, it's like then the momentum has to play out. If a train is going to go from 100 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour, it has to slow down. That's a process. So if you're going 100 miles an hour and you realize this hurts, I don't like thinking like this, I don't like paying attention to this, I hate watching UFC fighting, it makes me sick to my stomach, I'm not going to watch that. If I see somebody like in a shared space, like puts on the UFC fight, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go out and go outside and take some deep breaths and enjoy the quiet by myself for a minute. I'm going to choose not to participate in that energy because it doesn't feel good. And so like pledging allegiance to your own emotional guidance system, basically pledging allegiance to, I want to feel good. I recognize that sometimes people do things that they don't make me feel good. They make me feel bad. And that's not for the person to need to change. That's not for them to need to remove that from their behavior so that I can feel better. It's for me to remove my attention from this thing that does not feel good when I think about it. So it's 100% inside of us and inside of our mind. And that's the part where, while the train is slowing down on the things that you don't want, on the things that feel bad when you think about them, it's also the deliberate part goes into you can deliberately speed the momentum and add to the momentum of the things that you do want, of the things that do feel good. So that's where, like, I'm a daily journaler, for example, and I found Abraham and began my daily journaling practice kind of all at the same time. When I listen to Abraham-Hicks when she speaks, it's just like so much truth resonating through me. And that's ultimately like how we should take in everything is like, see what resonates, see what feels true to you. And then experiment with it in your own life. She gave me a theory. Abraham-Hicks, I listened every morning for months. And about 5 or 6 months after I found her, I quit my corporate software company job because I was basically taking her theory and I was going to have an experiment in my own life. I was going to clear my grid, is how she puts it. Like, your energetic field, what are you keeping in there? What relationships are you keeping alive inside there? What jobs, what responsibilities, what physical space are you keeping? All of that is part of your grid. So a job is a huge piece that kind of sets your tone of your whole grid because you're putting so much energy into it. So when you take a job that you don't like and you set it aside, which I want to talk more about that because it's not as simple as just quitting your job because you always take yourself with you. I feel like I found her 5 or 6 months later. I had healed so much of my anger towards my job. I was no longer blaming my job. I realized like the conflict I felt with my job was really a conflict I was feeling with myself. It was just being played out here. So by the time I left, there was no animosity left towards the company itself. It just felt like granting myself freedom. And that step forward opened up so many different things. Let me see what this question says. I've been going through some stuff since September, and I find myself thinking negative thoughts about the person who caused it. I need to work very hard on releasing that anger. So I feel like this is a perfect example of the two concepts of when we're in that deliberate creator space, sometimes we're allowing the negative train to slow down. And sometimes we're intentionally putting our foot on the gas pedal of the positive train. Now, this again, like I'm gonna just stop saying that this comes from Abraham Hicks because that's where I learned it. So every bit of like this structure, it comes from Abraham Hicks. So we'll just leave that part as an assumption going forward. But the deliberate part is about choosing what we can focus on that feels good. And I mean, and it's perfect that we don't even know the details of this because I think everybody has something in their mind that, like, as soon as it pops in your head, it doesn't feel good. It feels like confinement, it feels like somebody else has power over you, somebody else did something that you can't change. You don't have the power to change it. It already happened, it's in the past. You gotta just let it go and move forward. And that's really difficult because that anger, that sense of injustice, like that doesn't just go away. That's 100-mile train that's going to have to slow down. And it's very difficult to work on the negative train without accidentally pushing on the gas pedal of it. So the recommendation is to, as soon as you wake up and realize, like, oh, I'm on the negative train, I need to, figure out what can I switch my focus to that gets me back on the positive train. And so when we talk about releasing anger, it's not all the anger comes out and it's just like poof and it's gone. It's like we release it by, when you're finding yourself in the middle of it, you choose to change the subject to something that feels better to you. Not because that person doesn't deserve your anger or that you're wrong to be angry, but because you are embracing the idea that you don't deserve to feel like that. Life is supposed to be fun for you. You're designed to feel good by nature. So if you're holding yourself in a pattern of thought that doesn't feel good, that's okay. That's kind of like, I mean, it sounds weird, but I've been doing this for 6 years and I'm still unraveling my negative patterns of thought. It takes time because we put years and years and years into building up those trains and they're moving pretty quick. And that's great. That's how we create, that's how we invest our energy into creating what we want. We learn how to push the gas pedal of the train that we mean to move forward. So when we wake up in the unconscious, like, the momentum of this is my pattern of thought, I'm mad at them. You're not going to just not be mad at them all at once. Like, it's a matter of, I'm going to intentionally press pause on thinking about them for right now. I'm going to switch over here to a list of positive aspects about my dog. I'm going to switch to making a gratitude list of all the ways that the planet is supporting me without me doing anything. Like, the sun comes up, the rain comes down, the food grows. Like, it's kind of just all happening. Like, there's so much well-being that's mine without me even having to lift a finger. I have so much space in this world to just like get to wake up and see what I feel like doing today. So it's like a conscious choice of, this doesn't feel good, so I'm going to move my thoughts and my focus over here. And when you do that, when you choose to consciously shift your focus to something that feels better, that negative, angry train slows down 5 miles an hour. And now it's not going 100, it's going 95. And the next time it shows up in your brain, it's a 95-mile-an-hour train. And now you choose back over here to focus back into something that feels good. And now it's a 90-mile-an-hour train. And the next time it comes back, it's only going 90 miles an hour. And a year from now, maybe that train occurs to you and it's moving at like 1 to 2 miles an hour. And you're like, wow, this used to be something that felt so inescapable. And now it's as simple as, thank you. Okay, I'm so grateful that I'm not there anymore. And you're immediately pivoted back into something that feels good. So I think managing our expectations, momentum plays such a big part in this, in terms of, are we allowing the negative momentum to slow, or are we intentionally trying to build positive momentum? Because when we get our intentions involved and we really start thinking about things, I mean, you're pushing on the gas pedal of whatever it is you're thinking about, whether that's really what you want or not. And so law of attraction, being a deliberate creator, is about learning that the universe takes your thoughts, takes your attention, and hears that you want more of that and gives you more of that. So if you spend any time trying to get to the bottom of how do I release this anger, if you're focusing on the anger, the universe is like, she wants more of that. Here's some more of that, and just keeps giving it to you. The universe is so generous. You can have whatever you want, whatever you're willing to pay attention to. And so when we realize that we can intentionally push on the gas pedal of the train that we want to move forward, like all that looks like is every morning for 10 minutes, make a gratitude list. Every day, like press on the gas pedal of the train that you want to head forward, like make positive aspects about your life. And if your job sucks or your marriage isn't what you want, or your kids, your relationship with them isn't what you want, like whatever piece isn't working, as much as we can leave that out of the equation and let that be in the category of the momentum that we're allowing to slow down. And over here in this pile are the things that are working, that are easy to appreciate, that we're grateful for, that we love. And we're just making lists of all the things that we love. Like, and even if it's repeat stuff, it's the matter of spending our time focusing on that stuff is pushing the gas pedal. So those positive thoughts, especially when you're really going in the negative space, the positive thoughts are what's moving a mile an hour. And that's hard to hold your focus. That's hard to be entertained by that. There's not much life force in it. It's boring. It's just not working. It's easy for you to get distracted back over to here for the 100-mile-an-hour stuff that's really got your attention. So every morning, if we push on the gas pedal a little more, and now the positive thought train is going 2 miles an hour. Now it's going 3 miles an hour. Now it's going 4 miles an hour. Now, fast forward a year, it's going 200 miles an hour. And that is holding your focus. That is your dominant vibration. That's your dominant point of attraction. That's what your life is reflecting to you most of the time, is the fact that you mostly are pressing on the gas pedal of the positive train every single day. And you're recognizing when you wake up on the negative train and you're choosing to exit as soon as you can. So that's the part that really is where I feel like shadow work comes into it, where it's like, why are you so twirled up in that thing? It has something to teach you. It does. Every negative emotion that we ever feel is a message about how we are not really embodying the fullness of who we really are. Like Abraham-Hicks describes negative emotion as basically you are focusing in a way that your inner being, your higher total self, doesn't see it that way. When you feel bad, you've detached yourself from your true power, from your higher self, from the part of you that is basically an extension of source energy itself, that has access to universal power and infinite intelligence. We all have access to that through our higher selves. And when we feel good, we are connected with our higher selves, and we have access to all of that true power through that connection, through our good feeling, through our positive outlook. And so, yeah, I mean, it's easy to get caught in trying to figure out the details of working it out with other people. But the more we can recognize that they are just a mirror for something that is existing inside of us, and we take out the middleman, so to speak, and we turn inward and take it up between you and you. And that's again where the shadow work is. And I'm drowning in shadow work right now. Aren't we all? Like, I have been saying that this transit of, I mean, I know we're not talking astrology right now, but this transit of the South Node moving through Scorpio is definitely stirring people up. It's got people really close by with their shadow. The shadow is very accessible at this time. And this is a time where we get to, it's kind of like a status update between you and you, where you get to witness how good your coping skills are. When you're drowning in shadow work, the fact that you're able to say that and you're here sounds like you're coping somewhat, like you have skills that are getting you through it somewhat. Maybe your skills could be better, but that's the beauty of a negative emotion, is that it's very clarifying. Like, for example, I have a Taurus rising, so a Scorpio descendant, and my Pluto in Scorpio is like right by my descendant, so it's opposite my ascendant. Long story short, I attract power struggles. I attract people who overpower me, who push me down, and who cut me off from expressing my true authentic self. And every time I wake up inside telling that story, I'm like, they're just a mirror of me not letting myself embody my true power. And so every time I manifest one of them, I'm like, oh, you're another one of these who's here to help me see that I could be standing a little bit more in my power. I could be holding a little bit more of my power. I could be speaking with a little bit more of my own authority. I could be embodying my authentic self a little bit more. And it's only ever my openness to their overpowering me that allows that to happen. So the people who show up that help us have the negative experiences, the troublemakers, if we want to call them that, the ornery ones, they are actually some of our best teachers. Anger is truly a delicious emotion. It's basically where you are recognizing and you're very close to breaking through into your own power. The fact that you're angry and not in despair, not in hopelessness, not in, I don't want to live anymore because this is beyond my capabilities of coping with it. The fact that you're angry means that you have enough of your power to be angry. And this person who is like, what's that word? Simulating the other half of you, your shadow self, like they're embodying your shadow and they're like oppressing you, suppressing you. And that's just not how anything works. Like we attract from our point of attraction. We get what we think about, whether that's what we wanted or not. And sometimes when we manifest what looks like a negative experience on the surface, it can actually end up being really positive because when we manifest oppression, sometimes we stand up with our inner power in a way where that we never have before, that it just comes up out of us in response to this oppression that we feel, the injustice about being oppressed. And no, I'm not willing to handle that. No, I'm taking the steps to stand up for myself. I'm speaking up for myself in this moment. And think about it, like in my situation with my power struggles are a very common part in my shadow work. Like I don't get to see how empowered I am unless I have another instance of somebody who wants to overpower me. And I stand up and I like, in an arm wrestling match, I was losing like every single time. I was terrified of a power struggle because I would lose. I was that weak or whatever. And now it's like I come up against a power struggle and I'm like, bring it on because I can, yep, I have my power inside of me for the most part. There's levels, there's new levels, new devils, right? As soon as we feel like we've mastered it, now it's time for a more advanced lesson. When you up your skills to a 90, you manifest somebody who's at a 93 so that you can, again, clarify and raise your skills, raise your deliberate focus. Tina, you're awesome. I do personal readings. I do believe in the, let me make a note. I'm my own assistant today. This is where we get to get really clear about how much we love and appreciate Maddie. But I will be putting a lot of links, I'm guessing, into the description of this as soon as it's over, just to not slow down and have to do that every time. So yes, one-on-one readings, I do offer those on Saturdays. So I'll put the link for that if anybody wants to check that out. And then Monica says, thank you. I needed this conversation today. These past few days have been hard for me mentally. Depressing thoughts, anger, heavy heart. Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody this past Saturday in one of my private readings, and she was telling me she has like a whole thing of Scorpio energy, including it's her IC. So it's like, oh my gosh, like powerful Scorpio energy that she carries with her all the time. And that to me is going to manifest in some really painful situations because it's only in the painful situation that we figure out how to use our medicine and use our coping skills and all of that. Like you can't learn to swim on dry land kind of thing. Like you can practice surfing on the beach, but if you really want to learn to surf, you're going to have to get in the water. So Scorpio, powerful Scorpio energy, you are bound to have experiences that just hurt, They just oh my gosh, like, they just feel like they can take your whole breath away, you know? Like, it's just powerful, and the wisdom of Scorpio is that if you're gonna get through hell, you have to keep walking. You have to walk through it. And it can feel so isolating and it can feel so counterintuitive to let yourself be in that level of darkness. But at the same time, like, this is what she and I were talking about, like, we both feel depressions coming on and we cave into them. Like, that's just part of how we operate in the world, and I'd never really met somebody else to, like, talk to like that, um, where if I feel myself in low energy, I isolate myself, I get the snacks, I get my sweatpants on, I get my dogs in the bed with me, and we're cut off until I feel better, until I feel like engaging with people. And, maybe there's cries that need to happen, maybe what I binge watch while I'm depressed, maybe that has a message for me and, like, a piece for my bigger clarity. Like, there's value in the negative emotion that can be hard to see while you're in it. Um, a phrase that is really helpful to me personally in this space is pain is temporary, right? Like, our cork floats by nature. So our natural state is to feel good. So when we are feeling emotional pain, it is temporary. It is not going to last forever. And sometimes even just telling yourself that in the middle of the emotional pain can at least give you some space to breathe within it. Um, yeah, pain is not temporary. And as you tell yourself that, you remember that you're actually bigger than the pain that you're experiencing, and your awareness can grow to be bigger than the negative emotions that you're currently sitting inside of. And now your awareness is on the outside of the negative emotion and you're observing it. You're asking yourself those deeper questions of, where is this anger coming from? What's anger, like I said, I mean, divine rage, sacred rage is a real thing. Like, when we get pissed off, we stand up in ways that we were meant to stand up. We were meant to find our power, and sometimes we have to be angered into accessing our personal power. And again, we would rather have a nicer ride than that. We'd rather not have to get angry, but then again, like, for me personally, I give my power away mostly. Like I said, I attract these power struggle dynamics where I allowed myself to be overpowered for so long, and I finally had to be in such a state of suffering because I was so powerless that there was something that just cracked inside of me that was like, I'm done. I'm done being this way. I'm ready. I'm ready. Show me. Show me how I be happy because I'm ready. And that was the day I found Abraham. So, yeah, it's a lot to be in that much negative emotion, and like I said, like, especially when it's taking your whole breath away, when it's consuming you. And loss, I see, yeah, that Tina just lost her husband, and loss is, like, probably one of the most scorpionic experiences we can go through. Um, I One of the other links, Tina, I see your question about Abraham. Um, as I was reflecting and clarifying this morning for myself, I made a public playlist on my channel where it's an Abraham-Hicks Starter Kit, and it's got like a few videos of hers that I found this morning that I thought, yeah, that's really good, and just different examples of her talking to people. She takes questions from the audience and um, basically applies law of attraction principles to their specific example. So, like, in this instance of losing a spouse, I mean, that, other than a child, that's probably one of the hardest things that a human being can go through. So, again, that's a very scorpionic experience where scorpionic experiences, Plutonian experiences, either way, they draw to the surface our most painful wounds, our most painful shit. The stuff that was too hot to handle, we shoved it down into ourselves because we couldn't face it. And then when we go through something scorpionic, like a loss of a loved one, someone that we felt very attached to, it has you questioning everything. Like Scorpio energy is very enmeshed. It's very much like intertwined with someone else. And again, when you lose their energy, having to untangle the energy is like, it's a task that takes years sometimes, and that's, like, totally normal in those instances. It takes years to do, like, successful emotional processing depending on how deep the roots are, and in a spousal relationship, especially if you spent your whole life with somebody, like, those are deep roots that your energy is so together, and now how exactly, how do you let him go? And again, I don't think you do. I don't think that's, like, it's, not exactly the same, but like the angry train that we were talking about earlier, that loss and grief train is a lot the same. Like, it's very much recognizing when you're there, and as much of it as you want to take, because I would imagine within the grief there's at least a connection to him in some way that feels weirdly satisfying. And it's a matter of, like, recognizing which train you're on, and recognizing when you are in a place where what's in your mind, what you're focusing on is just it's consuming you in a way that feels like it's taking your life force, like you're losing control. I mean, I think everybody knows what I mean by that, like, when you just feel like your emotions are getting out of control, it's too intense. That's where we have to learn how to ground ourselves, like, back into something that can help us feel good in the moment, whether that's a pet, whether that's, a trusted friend or a therapist that you can call and reach out to, or writing in your journal, or going and taking a swim, or turning on music that helps you to release some energy and even cry. Um, Crying is a powerful form of release. And sometimes, like, I haven't lost someone like this, but I did employ someone who had lost a child a few years before I employed them, and the level of grief that she was still in was palpable on a daily basis. And at that point, like, really your best hope at that level of grief is to cry, as just cry, just get it out, let it melt out of you through your tears. And that's not a fast solution. That's like going back to the angry train, slowing down like a couple miles per hour every time you kind of like let yourself switch back to something that feels good. Let yourself cry, let yourself scream. Anybody know about scream therapy? Is anybody familiar? When you have that much negative emotion inside of you, like, that train is going 100 miles an hour, maybe even 500 miles an hour is how it can feel sometimes. And it's like, you have to move that energy somehow. You have to. So this is where, like, either screaming, like, I don't know if you guys have ever tried it. Nobody's telling me in the comments if they have, but like, I have one example where this was so low stakes too. It just like speaks to, my issues that I typically deal with about being a perfectionist and a control freak and whatever. Like, I was at work and we had this big order that we ordered all this special food to be able to put this order together. And I was going to put it in the cooler, or somebody else, I was watching them like put it into the cooler, and they like pushed it, like using the cart to open the doors, and the food like all fell off. It was like a whole day of effort and all of this special order. And obviously not even close to on par with what we're talking about with Tina's example, but the amount, like the instant trigger, the instant negative emotion, the anger, the frustration, the mad at that guy who just spilled all this stuff. And I mean, this was several years into me like practicing these skills. And my first instinct with how angry I was at that guy, I was like, I need to isolate myself, first of all, that I need to get away from other people because I know that none of this is theirs. This is all coming up through and out of me. And I went to my car in the parking lot and I screamed and screamed and screamed. Like, we're talking bloody murder, like, just God, like, how? I was so angry and I screamed until I cried. And then after I cried for a few minutes, I felt really tired and really empty. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt like this fucking sucks. We ordered all that stuff. I don't have anything to be able to redo this. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to fix this. I felt really defeated, but I didn't feel full of rage. So this is like shadow work, right? Like the negative emotion isn't going to just stop existing. It's about learning these coping skills to be able to navigate. And when you're flooded with that 500 miles an hour emotion, screaming is a really fast way. Like, I don't know if you guys are blocked on crying, but sometimes I can be, where I've got this stiff upper lip thing where I'm like keeping myself under control. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing that. But screaming is so much more voluntary, that again, you can just get off by yourself. And I will warn you, if you do it effectively, and if you really needed to get some energy out, like my throat was sore for days. I almost lost my voice over it because I just like moved. I forced all of that energy up and out of me. Get out of me. This is not who I am. That's why it doesn't feel good. Get out of me. So moving the energy, whether that's crying or screaming or exercising. Sunny's mentioning exercise, as well. Kickboxing, like intensive exercise, like wearing your physical body out is also releasing that energy. Physical exercise in general. Another thing, a time that I was like really mad, I went to the trail and I ran sprints. I ran sprints until I felt like my legs were jello and my lungs were on fire. And there was nothing solved, but at the end of it, I felt more empty than angry. And that felt better. So it's not always about like feeling great in every single moment. It's about feeling better. And so that's like coming back to this emotional guidance system. It's like, think of the train, like in a physical sense. It's easy to understand that like the train is going 100 miles an hour and physically it's going to have to slow down to reach 0 miles an hour. And the emotional scale is a lot like that. Like if you're feeling rage, you're not going to jump to happy all at once. You're going to go through like less rage and then maybe just anger and then maybe just frustration and then maybe just annoyance and then neutral and then a little bit positive and now a little bit more positive and now joyful and now happy. Like it's such a process of feeling better that like that's another piece of emotion management and shadow work, in my opinion, is like if you can move the energy such that you feel better, you've done good work. And now from where you are, where you feel better, is there anything else you can think of? Like now that you've gone for your walk and you come home, can you think of something else that might be nice for you? Um, like making a cup of tea and holding it, going and sitting on your porch and like listening to the birds. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just moment to moment to moment. Is there anything else I can think of that would help me feel better? And yeah, I think I wanna watch that show. It's funny, and I usually laugh if I can get myself to focus on it. So, like, just all day, every day, like, is there anything else I can think of that would help me feel a little bit better? Life does force shadow work. Yes, it does. I've had that same screaming experience. Yeah, because sometimes it feels like you're boiling. It feels like that energy is gonna go somewhere. This is lava inside a volcano. The volcano is going to explode, and the best thing you can do is get away from everybody else. Get yourself some privacy and have whatever meltdown you need to have. Because holding that stuff in is what leads to just looping there. And now you're stuck there feeling like I'm manifesting this all day, every day. It's like, if that is your experience, chances are you're not letting it out. And again, that's where I go back to, in grief, there's at least a connection to the person. Like it feels miserable, but it's better than not being connected to them. So that part, that's where the roots have to work themselves out. And it can take years to unravel energy. But when you can, Go sit on your porch and listen to the birds. Hold your cup of tea and smell it and feel the steam coming up in your face. And watch the show that you know will make you laugh if you can make yourself focus on it. Give yourself a chance to feel good. And that that part, I mean, it like I said, it doesn't just jump from despair to happiness all at once. It's a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And then a year from now, you look at it and you're like, wow, it's been almost 3 days since I've cried. Wow. I mean, there was times when I couldn't go 5 minutes without crying, and now it's been 3 days? Wow. Like, that's how, like, you recognize the progress. When you're inside of it, it can feel like it's never ending, and that's where my bridge out of it is pain is temporary. So if it's temporary, that means I can witness it receding. The fact that I'm in it means it's already fading. So if I can try to get to a vantage point where I can see it fading, I can at least watch it fade instead of being caught up in how bad it feels. So I yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing your specific examples. I think that helps. Yeah. I'm doing that. Birds, sun, fresh air. Nature is very healing. Um, but like another analogy that I think is important to keep in mind that's so much easier to conceptualize, like in the physical, like if you broke your hip, for example, like the process to heal that is a year, if not more than that. Sometimes healing physically can take even longer. So emotional healing, I think, is even more intricate and in depth. And yeah, I think there's just way more to it to heal our energy than to heal a broken bone. So when we think about how long does it take to heal, I mean, that's a question that kind of misses the point of like a little bit better and 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 a little bit better. And right now it feels like that's maybe not a big enough solution because you feel like you have so far to go, but 30 days from now, 60 days from now, it is better. It adds up. So whether you're, feeling a little bit worse every day or feeling a little bit better every day, there's space in it to try to find a place where you can recognize it as energy that is trying to move through you. It has a message to share with you. Um, hindsight's 2020 also. As we get into this process of like being more aware in this way, I realized like it basically rewrote my past. And that can be helpful too, like not necessarily in this subject where it's still so active inside of you, but on different subjects that have already completely played themselves out to see, oh my gosh, I can totally see why I had to go through that hard thing because, when I divorced my scumbag husband, I fell in love with my divorce attorney. That's definitely off Sex in the City. So, not a real life example technically, but that kind of stuff happens all the time where I see why life took me through that path that maybe didn't seem like something that I wanted, but by the end of it, I had something that I needed, that I really needed, that served me so well to go forward and do good work in this world. Like one of my most formative experiences was being bullied in 7th grade. And their platform for bullying me was that I was ugly. And that very much reflected my own insecurity with my own physical self, my own body image issues, and all of that. And it happened to be just in terms of shadow work, more so in astrology, especially, it happened to be at my Chiron opposition. So Chiron is our wounded healer in our astrology chart. It can show some of our deepest pain, but also where we're meant to help heal the collective, the medicine that we're meant to share with others. And that experience of being told by the entire 7th grade class for a whole school year that I'm ugly, that left its mark and a wound that I don't know if it's healed yet. It's definitely way more healed than it was. I mean, that's like 20 freaking years ago, but I've definitely come a long way. And now I feel like I teach through basically all of my content, I teach people how to love themselves more. I teach people how to be gentler with themselves. I teach people how to feel better in their life, even when maybe things aren't exactly the way that you want them to be. We have that power. And we don't always recognize that we do until we go through something that's really, really damaging. And in the healing of the damage, we recognize a completely different part of ourselves. And now that we recognize that part of ourselves, we are able to give it away to other people more, and maybe for the first time ever in this experience. Um, there's definitely part of my Chiron experience, of my bullying experience, where I learned the lesson in a deep way that words are weapons, that the words you choose to say out loud, they matter a lot. They have impact, no matter if it's positive or negative. And we are all responsible for the impact that we create in this world. And if I hadn't had the experience of being bullied, I wouldn't have that appreciation for words and speaking and ripple effects and the way that either we can torture each other or we can empower each other. We can lift each other up. So the words that we say are important. And I learned that lesson and I share in the loving way that I do, or I try to be loving, because of the experience of what I received and the pain that goes along with being bullied and being told that you're not good enough, on and on and on. So Monica shares that she has Chiron and Taurus in the 12th house, especially 12th house Chiron. That's like, there's healer energy there. There's like in your own personal healing, in that recovery of how you figure out how to put the pieces back together, there is something that the collective needs from your healing that will serve their healing. So Chiron is that energy where we pay it forward. When we finally figure out how to get ourselves to feel better, we want to help other people figure out how to help themselves feel better. That's just an energy that exists inside of all of us, which I think is really nice. Do I need to cut cords? He's attached to my soul, I think, and it's too painful. I totally believe that. These are, anytime we get into yes, no question territory, you'll find me kind of backing away just because, the path forward is so unique to everyone. Tina, one of the categories that I will put in the getting started in the description, I'll put a link to pulling your chart. It's a little overwhelming, but I have a couple videos on my channel that aim to help you get started in the easiest way possible. And as far as like, that is a perfect segue into your next thought of, I'm learning to love myself right now. I don't know how. That's a process, that's another one that's a train that is moving in your life, either moving in a direction of I don't like myself, or it's moving in a direction of I do like myself. I don't know if it's possible to be neutral towards yourself. It's either you don't like you or you do. And that is something where when I came to Abraham, I did not like myself at all. I would venture to say that I hated myself. There was so much self-loathing and criticism and just feeling inferior in every possible way. And so how do you love yourself? How do you go from hating yourself to loving yourself? And again, it's that train analogy of every time you recognize you're in the not liking yourself part, or the beating up on yourself part, or the being unrealistic with yourself, or having too high of expectations, like every time you realize that you're being mean to you, like this is kind of where we get into monitoring our self-talk. And if you don't know what your self-talk sounds like, then just listen and you'll realize like you basically say the same things to yourself over and over and over and over. And either those things are mean or they're nice. And this is a process of if you're sitting in a spot where the mean things are the things that are moving 100 miles an hour, and when you hear like, I'm lovable, I'm good, I have a good heart, my intentions are good, when you hear those things and you're in that place of hating yourself, those things feel like the good things feel like they're moving like 1 mile an hour, if at all. And that's the part where every day, a little bit more, we push on the gas pedal of the train that we want to move forward. We push on the gas pedal of our self-love train a little bit every day. And one thing that I have that I'm going to leave in the description as well, which was a huge game changer for me on lots of levels, is the deservability treatment. So deservability is a concept that I didn't even know that word. That wasn't in my vocabulary. So I went to a new therapist July 8th of 2016. And I went because I was becoming suicidal for a whole nother round of that. I'd been through that many times in my teens and early 20s. And I recognized this level of unhappiness that I'm now contemplating. Maybe I just don't want to live anymore. And so I'm like, I need help. I need to go get a therapist and get some insight here because this is obviously not working for me. So I go to that therapist and she basically starts our first session with like, tell me about yourself, what brings you here? And I start explaining. Within the first like 30 seconds, she gets up. She's like, oh no, keep talking. Sorry, I just need to get something. And she goes over to her desk and she pulls out a piece of paper. She comes back, she sits down. She's been very engaged in listening, even though she's getting the paper. She lets me finish. And she hands me this piece of paper and she says, do me a favor and read this out loud. And so I look at it and I start to read it out loud. And I barely get to the second sentence before I am bawling because I don't believe these things. Like when you're telling me that I'm good, it's aggravating. It's immediately triggering my train that says you're bad, that you aren't doing it right, you're bad. I hate the way you laugh, I hate the way you talk, I hate your tone of voice. Like all of these things when the deservability treatment has me say I am good, it's like this self-hatred immediately shows up inside of me and it made me cry and I bawled in that therapist's office. I'm not worthy. It's my motto. Yeah. Yeah, me too. I had that big time. Was like, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy of love. I wasn't. And there's so many roots back into how humans come to believe that about themselves. A lot goes back into early childhood, not to like blame the mom or anything, but the early caregivers that we have, they teach us how lovable we are. And it wasn't that my mom didn't love me, it was that she had, like, 4 kids by the time I was 4. So, there was just a lot going on, and the amount of quality time and attention was pretty limited. So, that makes sense that I didn't have, like, a steady income of love early on, and attention and affection and physical bonding, and I grew up to believe that I'm not worthy of that. I mean, little girl Carly, 2-year-old Carly, who's crying and there's nobody to pick her up, she doesn't understand that, well, brother Ross, who's only a year old, he's really upset or he's sick or whatever. Plus, she's like 8 months pregnant. So she's got very limited energy, so to speak. So, yeah, 2-year-old Carly didn't understand any of that. And so those beliefs that we're not worthy, they get started so early on that they're like, just all consuming, they're just normal. And we don't even necessarily recognize that we're doing that to ourselves until you sit down in a therapist's office and she's like, here, read this out loud. And you're like, holy shit, I freaking hate myself. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that. Oh, and then I felt bad that I hated myself. And now I'm beating up on myself because I'm beating up on like it just, yeah, it's one of those where it's no different. It's the same kind of thing as like waking up on the angry train, waking up on the self-hate train just means like, oh, yep, here I am, calling myself dumb instead of saying like, it's okay that you don't know things, like, yeah, I mean, when we call ourselves dumb inside of our minds, when we refer to ourselves as, yeah, dummy, like those kinds of things, they have an impact on our self-esteem, on our point of attraction. Our point of attraction, because when we call ourselves dumb, we take the emotional hit of that. And dumb is just one example. I mean, we can be mean to ourselves in all kinds of ways. Um, but yeah, you take the emotional hit of it, and now you're sad because you're reminded how dumb you are. And it reminds me of a quote. I had to learn this. This was part of me learning to love myself too, was the Albert Einstein quote that's like, if you judge a fish his whole life by his ability to climb a tree, he'll always think that he's stupid. I think I messed that up a little bit, but it's basically the truth. Um, yeah, that like we each are brilliant. And that's something that we can choose to believe or not. And I would encourage trying to adopt that belief and trying to find the unique intelligence inside of you, the unique ways where you are really gifted, the superpowers that you naturally possess. Like, for one example, I was very hard on myself about my tone of voice and my lack of social skills. And really, at the end of the day, like, my lack of social skills, how it's manifested now, it's like actually one of my superpowers. Like, I'm built to spend a lot of time alone. That's where my magic happens, is when I'm by myself. So my lack of social skills, like, basically pushed me out of like spending all my time with friends and with other people, because that's not where I'm supposed to be. So it's like I clipped my wings with my social skills because I wanted myself to come over this way and be alone more often so that I could do the things that happen when I'm alone, when I turn inward and I be inside my inner world. That's where there's real work for me to do here in this lifetime. And so a lack of social skills, I beat up on myself for that for like 26, 27 years. And then I finally realized, like, I have the exact social skills I'm meant to have, right? Like, if I was meant to have better social skills, I would. And I don't. So how can I embrace who I am and what I can do and help myself to feel better by loving on my strengths instead of focusing on my weaknesses? So learning to love yourself, I feel like it's such a process of finding the good. And that's something that astrology, natal charts can help with big time, because especially the way I interpret them, I'm like, every single placement is part of your superpower. So there's so much room in there to find, like, how are you wired and why is it a good thing that you're wired that way? Like, another example is like my sensitivity. That was something that when I very first came to the therapist, that like I told her in that very first thing that like I'm too sensitive. I need to heal that. I need to figure out how to grow a thicker skin. I need to figure out how to like not care what people think or whatever. And now at this point, 6 years later, I would say my sensitivity, one, it's probably even more sensitive than it was back then. And two, it's my best superpower. It's not a weakness. It's not something that makes me defective. It might be uncomfortable for other people. I've had to learn how to accept that. That was part of loving that side of myself, is accepting that not everybody wants to know their own emotional truth. And just because I'm sensitive to it and can tell you what your emotional truth is, not everybody wants to hear that. And lots of people shoot the messenger. So, yeah, it's like learning to appreciate your skills separate of the feedback that you're getting from other people, because not everybody's ready for you. A lot of people, they're jealous, they're mad at themselves, they don't even like themselves. So why would they like you? You know, like it's one of those things where letting go of what other people are doing and focusing into ourselves and trying to find the good inside ourselves. Astrology, how I think about it when you look at your natal chart, is like opening the lid to your toolbox and getting to look at like, what are the tools that you brought with you? You know, we can cry all day about I forgot my hammer, but maybe you're here in this life to face screws. So you need screwdriver. You don't even need a hammer. So it's like, which way are we focusing? Are we focusing on how we're not good enough yet? Or are we focusing on, these are the things I got going for myself? These are the things that are working. You know, these are the things that I am grateful for in my life. These are the relationships that I am grateful for in my life. Like, maybe I don't have the one that I really, really want the most, but I do still have this person who I'm so thankful for. And the sun did come up this morning, and I do have this house. They're predicting snow tomorrow and sub-zero temperatures. And I have a house with heat where, and plenty of clothes to put on, where I can be as warm and cozy as I want. Like, there's a lot of things in this world to be grateful for. And choosing how we focus, choosing how we pay attention, that is where all our power is. And when we get good at paying attention to things that make us feel good, that's like where we get into this place where life can go from being like one joyful experience to the next. It really can be that uh, that simple, where it's like that, because at that stage you also see negative things as they're not actually negative. Like contrast is what that is in Abraham language, is like contrast is where we ask, contrast is where we feel the negative emotion. And when we're in contrast, we're expanding the universe itself. We're expanding our own vortex and the mass consciousness vortex. So, like when we feel bad, when you feel that in your core, that just contraction, and again, it can like take your breath away, like literally. When you feel that, it hurts, it feels really awful. But in Abraham language and in understanding how these negative emotions work, when you're in negative emotion, that contraction that you feel is actually the feeling of giving birth to the expansion. And we came here to be physical for the contrast, like not to live happily ever after. We came for the hard stuff. We came for the negative emotion that we would run into, because we knew that we would automatically launch this expansion. When you are in negative things, you want something that's better. When you're rude to somebody, you want yourself to be nicer. When somebody's rude to you, you want people in the world to be nicer. So you automatically ask for things all day, every day. You ask for these clarifying pieces. You figure out what you really want when you run into what you don't want. So the negative emotion is clarifying. The negative emotion is really helpful. The negative emotion lets you tune in to where you are in relation to your bigger self, your higher self, your inner being self, the part of you that is an extension of source energy. Because when you're really merged with that higher part of yourself, negative emotions, like even though it hurts, pain is temporary, and I'm going to observe this heartache that I'm feeling. I'm going to observe this sense of disgust and understand, why am I so disgusted over this? Um, I worked on a video here not too long ago where it launched so many rockets of divine disgust. I was like just sick with what I was looking at, and like, why are you looking at that? Aren't you saying like you shouldn't be looking at that? And yeah, I am. Like, and this is especially early on, as much as you can get off the subject of things that don't feel good, that's what you need to do. In a more advanced setting where you're really dominantly feeling good most of the time, you know how to get back to a good feeling place. You know how to pull your attention at any time and put it back into something that feels good. When you get that ability down, when you have that skill set at your disposal, you can open up to things that intentionally launch these rockets of expansion because you believe in the expansion. When I see something that's disgusting to me, I launch a reality that isn't like that. It's better than that. It's full of love, not greed and competition. It's full of people knowing their worth and people feeling their own power for themselves. Like, we launch that rocket, and if you listen to Abraham's steps, step 1 is we ask. That's where we launch the rocket, we ask. Step 2 is source answers immediately. So as soon as you launch the rocket, boom, it's done. Step 3 is when you allow the expansion that you've created. The expansion that you created by asking for it, it exists because source answered immediately. And step 3 is where you let it come into your life. And step 4 is just getting really good at step 3. Step 4 is where you're basically a master allower. You know how to feel good on purpose basically all the time. And so you just are allowing good feeling things to manifest around you most of the time. And step 5 is being in a step 1 moment, being in an asking moment, being in a painful moment, and not beating yourself up for it. Recognizing that contrast is the basis of the universe. Negative emotion is the basis of the entire universe, and there is no escaping this. And so by feeling this emotion, this is what I came here for. Like, my soul was born to have this experience and launch this expansion. And the thing is, like, this disgusting stuff, I'm watching other people who just like have different opinions from me, and they're living their life differently. They're making different choices. And I find it literally disgusting. And it isn't about getting those disgusting other ones to be different. It's about like feeling for myself what my point of view is, getting clear on who am I in this world and how do I want to show up and how do I want to present myself and what are my beliefs and how does that have me acting in the world, and to get me clear enough on my beliefs so that I can embody them. And from there, it's like we embody what we believe, we embody this good feeling vibe that we surround ourselves with, and life is always a mirror for our point of attraction. So from there, it's like the better we feel on the inside, the better our life is manifesting around us. And that's just kind of in general. And again, I definitely feel for anybody who's coming to this as more of a beginner and is currently in really dominant negative emotion, because that's definitely where I started. And the only thing I can like recommend is a little bit every day, a little bit every day. Like the Deservability Treatment, my therapist told me, go home and read this out loud while you look at yourself in the mirror at least once a day. And I did it like 2 or 3 times a day because it only took 2 or 3 minutes to do it. And the other thing I did was on that Abraham Starter Kit playlist that I'll link in the description when we're done here, there is the first video that I started with, which is a good morning rampage. And so when I woke up in the morning, I would go get in the shower and then go to work. And so I started by playing this Good Morning Rampage while I was in the shower. And it didn't add any time to my morning. I still woke up at the same time, only while I was in the shower, instead of playing music, I played this video. And is like 13 minutes long and basically sounds like it's a new day. This is a good day. I'm new today. The world is different for me today because I'm different today. This is a new day. This is a good day. And so, like, give yourself 14 mornings of that and tell me that you don't just feel different. And it sounds like such minor things. It sounds like this can't be it. It can't be that simple, but it really does matter. Like, how many millimeters of progress are you making every day? And even if you're only making 1 millimeter of progress and that feels like not enough, it feels too small, give yourself 30, 60, 90 days of that, and you've made real change. You've improved your overall mood. And does it still come back sometimes and sting? Yes. Yes. There's no getting away from the negative emotion. But every time it comes back, as you intentionally build up the side of the momentum that you want, the self-love, the positive intentions, the looking at the world through a glass half full kind of stance, as you build that side up, every time the past comes back, it stings a little less because the train is moving a little slower. So it's such a gradual process, and that can be hard for people to wrap their minds around, especially, not saying that's anybody here, but especially in today's day and age of like instant gratification. Stella dog. Oh my gosh. She's losing her shit. Look at him. Can you see him in here? They're right there. They're getting each other. Oh my goodness. Yeah, today's day and age of instant gratification, like plastic surgery, and there's a pill for everything and all of this, it's like, yeah, this isn't like that. This is like 1 millimeter a day. And if you want 3 feet of progress, you're going to need to work on it for 3 years. And that's how it works. And it's like, yeah, the time is going to pass anyway. The time goes by whether you're making yourself feel a little better or you're wallowing in where you are. And sometimes we have to wallow. That was kind of my point on like caving in on the depression and like letting yourself be there for a little while, letting yourself cry, letting yourself scream. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is wallow in it until you feel like, I could keep doing this, but yeah, there's this other thing that I want to pull myself back together because I want to do this other thing. Like, we don't wallow forever. Like, our cork floats by nature. So eventually the energy will move and you will feel like doing something besides wallowing. And so I'm a big believer in that, like kind of letting the energy unfold organically, like be where you are, observe where you are, and be grateful that you're alive and anything else that you can reach for in that moment. And as much as you can, wake up on the negative train and get over onto a positive train, and do that every time you wake up on a negative train. And it can get repetitive and it can be like, I've been doing this for 2 years. When am I going to stop being sad? And it's like, Maybe never, because the real point is like, are you less sad than you used to be? Are you happier now than you used to be? Great, it's working. Maybe the sadness never fully goes away. Maybe that's just part of being human, is that sometimes in this physical world, there are things that are just outside of our control and it bothers us. That is just part of being physical. So, getting okay with that and learning how to deliberately focus yourself into whatever positive thoughts you can reach for in any moment. And as long as you feel a little bit better, then you're headed in the right direction. You're moving your way up the emotional scale, and a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. It doesn't take long before it adds up into some real progress. Oh, I'm thankful to be here in this moment, for serious. Yeah, Diane says, we live in a society that rewards extroversion, difficult for introverts. Um, I'll give you a little bit of that, for serious, for sure. But at the same time, like, feeling like this world isn't built for me, feeling like I'm an outcast, feeling like it's not fair that the world is built for people who are different than me and here I am existing. Sometimes we get like divinely guided to the outskirts of fitting in and society and all of that, because the work that we're meant to do is over there. Like, I use that analogy all the time, like a bird who's sad that their wings are clipped. And it's like, yeah, but if your journey, if your mission is on the ground, aren't you glad that you didn't waste all that time flying? Aren't you glad that you got there and recognized, like, this is where my mission is? I'm going to make the best of this. Like, I'm highly introverted. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day too. I'm like, I don't really have friends per se. I have my partner. I have 4 pets, which kind of feel like my friends. And my family lives close by, but I see them very infrequently, like maybe once a month, every couple months sometimes. Um, yeah. And I don't socialize. I keep my physical energy space very clear of other people. I don't generally go and be physically around people very often, because of, like we talked about at the beginning, like, I'm hungover now and I need to do repair work and get their energy back out of my energy before I'm pure enough to do the work that I'm trying to do. And my work is this creative flow that is moving through me all the time, that has me learning new things and asking new questions and making new videos and all of these things that feel so satisfying to me. So, again, kind of the same thing. Like, I had such powerful social anxiety that I just, God, it made me so nervous and scared. And I just really hated being around people. And so, because of that social anxiety, I spent a lot of time by myself growing up and into my early 20s. And when I found Abraham, it actually healed most of that and lets me see now that the social anxiety was to keep me isolated somewhat. And now I don't have social anxiety, but I isolate myself on purpose. So I don't need something like that fear to keep me isolated, because I'm choosing that that's what's best for my energy, is to stay away from most people, which sounds really harsh. I get it. But I absorb energy like a sponge, and you got to take accountability for that when that's how you are. It's like, you can't be mad at the people whose energy you absorbed. You can only choose whether or not you want to go there and absorb it or not. It's a guarantee that when I go around other people, I'm going to absorb their energy. That's why, like, in a crowd setting, I'll have a panic attack, because I'm freaking absorbing everybody's energy all at the same time. So it's like, I can't go into a crowd and be like, okay, now everybody keep your energy to yourself. I don't want to absorb any of that today. I can only decide I'm not going to go get in a crowd. I don't go places where there are crowds, because it freaks me out. And I absorb everything. There's there's voices, there's visions, there's emotions that are just everywhere, all over the spectrum. And I have a panic attack because you can't process that much input all at once. And so, again, you can't make the crowd stop sending you signals. You can only choose to not go there. So there's so many different pieces of all of this. Um, I love that you guys are resonating with it. Yeah, all of this, all of this feels so right on, and it made me wonder, like, maybe I know I talk about law of attraction like a lot mixed in with everything else, but maybe even doing like this specific live stream once a month or whatever I can fit in, just to kind of keep coming back to this conversation for those of you that are newer. And again, I am going to put several links into the description. I made some notes of things that I want to share in there. As far as tools, if you are wanting to move forward and get started with your own astrology journey or your own journey of self love, these are definitely tools that you can use and engage with on a daily basis to help yourself make those millimeters of progress along the way. Mm. I feel like this is a good stopping point. I am so genuinely grateful that you joined me this morning. We've had some really important feeling conversations, and I needed this just as much as anybody else who would take it in. So, finding this community of fellow people who feel like, you're the most sensitive person and you're so introverted and that you don't have a social circle because you're so introverted. Like, this is me. This is how my life is. I'm basically a shut in inside my home, and I spend time being creative. I spend time with my animals, and that's most of what I do. And I love it. It works for me to not be social. It works for me to mostly not see other people, to be very selective with the people that I do spend my time with. Even over Zoom, you can absorb a lot of energy, even off of a video like this one, you can absorb a lot of energy. So just be wary of that. And, every day, a little bit, 1 millimeter a day on purpose, absorb some energy that helps you to feel good, even if it's only 5 minutes. um, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It was so lovely to connect with all of you here today. If you haven't already, please consider liking the video, subscribing to my channel. Check out the links that'll be in the description for you. And until next time, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.